Dennis is on. Hi, Dennis.
Hello.
How are you with your new babies?
Oh, they're fine, but one of them just left to go to the. Aaron Weiss said you gave the best speech at the wedding dinner of anybody.
Wow, thank you.
That's what he told me this morning.
Wow, that's a huge compliment from Aaron Weiss. Thank you. I'm delighted.
Gilda, what do you know what is scheduled for March 31st in the evening?
Yes, that's the Blossom Market Hall event.
That is.
Yes.
Okay.
And you were going to get me the additional insured and the check and
you want the check now?
Yeah, let me know when I can pick that up from you so we can reserve it.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. I'll take care of that as soon as this is over.
Beautiful.
I gotta run the insurance thing again because it was for the date of the old date. I'll do the new. Okay, no problem. Well, that takes care because I had something else to do that evening, and this would take precedence, so I'm going to do that.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Fred.
Hey there.
Hi, Fred.
Hi, Fred.
Want to make sure I was on this.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
We knew you were with us in spirit last time.
Right.
Hi, Steve.
I showed up. I just showed up and missed my invocation that JP had asked me to step in and do. So I'm like completely let him down.
No problem, Fred. No problem.
I know you say that. I appreciate that, but still, yeah.
Hey, look, you guys, it's a visiting Rotarian.
Steve Garrett.
Hello, Steve.
Oh my gosh.
Good to see you, buddy.
Nice to see you, Michael.
What are you drinking there? We'd like some.
It's milk. Kind of boring. It's milk.
Diet Coke.
Yeah.
Equally boring.
I guess the way it is, I could have booze and you wouldn't know the difference. But that's
exactly why I asked.
I'm still working on coffee, so.
Anybody here remember the old days when people kept booze in their office?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yes.
for a meeting and they'd pour you a drink.
Right.
And they go to Grandview Restaurant to drink. All the doctors would be there at lunch.
And then
I remember
back to work afterwards. 3 shifts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They drove back to work.
I remember my days in healthcare down at St. Mary in Long Beach, and at Christmas time, you'd go to these, parties for your clients because we had a lot of harbor clients, and the only thing that was being given as gifts was booze. I mean,
Wow.
it was nowadays that's just like.
What?
So Fari, was there a day when dentists drank at lunch? Or there was? Okay.
Yesterday.
I went to a dentist convention. I was in the same hotel, and cocaine was the drug of use.
Oh man. Oh wow.
So what you're saying, Mike, is go to the dentist in the morning.
Very early, right?
Right.
Okay. All right.
You're muted, Fari. I'm sorry.
I have to say that,
Yeah.
actually in the back, I have some vodka for some of my patients when they come because of the anxiety.
Oh my gosh. Hey, I'm a patient. I never see any of that.
Yeah.
Well, you
have
always
anxiety.
need plenty of anesthetic,
Okay, I think it's now 2 minutes past. We're going to start the meeting. So let me bring my little bell here. I'm calling the February 10, 2022 meeting of the Rotary Club of San Marino to order. Okay, so we are a club which truly makes
a
difference.
Thank you, thank you. Please stand and join me in reciting the forward test of the things we think, say, and do in the Rotary. I'm going to share my screen. Give me a sec. Okay. First.
Is it
the truth?
Second.
Is
it fair to all
concerned? Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you. Please remain standing while we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance and inspirational words today by Fred Sold. Fred.
If you follow me, I'm actually going to sit so people can see my face. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And it's my honor today to give the invocation. When I do the invocations, I like to try to see if I can, make it a little bit contextual to the program or what we're discussing today. So, since Michael Driebe is going to be speaking about the work at Methodist Hospital, I looked up Methodist invocations, and what it came up with was in the Methodist usage of prayer, asking for special sense of God's presence and guidance. And it also says that invocations are often at early point in the service or at the beginning of a meeting. So that's what we're doing here. And with that, in whatever way you like to stand in the Lord's presence, dear God, be among us today in whatever form or figure we require to feel your presence and to bring us together as one in your spirit. Open our ears, our eyes, and our hearts to the call you have for each of us individually and together as we conduct our busyness here as San Marino Rotarians, share community together, and hear about the good work being done at Methodist Hospital of Southern California, Arcadia. Thank you for all the blessings and gifts we receive, whether known or unknown, deserved or not. May your spirit remain ever present among us. Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you. Okay, now it's time to introduce guest, Gilda.
Yes, I want to introduce two guests that I have here today that I saw. Actually, Dr. Joshua Cohen, he and I jumped in at the same time at 11:20 or whatever it was. He is a published author and a media psychologist working with USC Gallery of Genetic. It's an art gallery in the Institute of Genetic Medicine. Lynn Crandall, who's visited in the past, he works with Lynn Crandall. And so I welcome him today. He does virtual reality, pretty incredible stuff. So thank you for being here with us today. And then the other individual, I can't see her. Where did she go? Oh, she's on the second page. Okay. Lauren Justice is also a guest of mine. She's a photo journalist. So she's newly moved here from Wisconsin. There she is. Welcome. Pleasure to have you. And she's done some work with nonprofits and has worked with, newspapers in journalism. And so she's here to learn more about what Rotary is all about. We welcome you. Okay, I don't believe there's any other guests. I think that's it.
That's it?
Back to you.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Gilda. Thank you. Okay, now we have time to go to a few announcements. The first announcement, I'm going to call Denise. She's going to tell us about Rise Against Hunger.
All righty. Hi, everybody. 4 years ago, we did a Rise Against Hunger meal packaging event at Huntington Middle School. We've created a new war chest because we had some money from San Marino Rotary Charities, about $3,000. And from our students, raising money at pop-up sales of about $4,000. So our event will be on Saturday, March 19th, here at San Marino High School in the cafeteria. Mr. Kurtenbach has had the fees waived. It costs $450 to use the cafeteria, and he's got the funding for that. So we will be packaging 20,000 meals for Rise Against Hunger. I would love to have at least 30 Rotarians there, either an 8 to 10 a.m. block or a 10 to noon block. I don't expect you to give your whole Saturdays, but it would be a really good time for you to see what we do and see how food makes a difference in the rest of the world. Our previous food. We did 35,000 meals 4 years ago, and that funding went to the Philippines and elsewhere. And they used it to entice students to come in and do 6 weeks of computer training, which made them more employable. And so when we look at all the things that we want our students to learn about in the 7 areas of focus, education is definitely one of those areas, and entrepreneurship is another. And so we've used those skills to raise these funds. So I'll put it in the chat. It's going to be on March 19th here at San Marino High School from 8 to noon. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise. A quick question: how do we register if you want to come? Do we send you an email? Is that the way it works?
Gilda, do you think that we should send out a group? Is there a group message that we can send it, or is there a sign-up sheet that we could create? Whatever would be simplest for you as Rotarians. I know you're busy humans. Our students will be getting community service hours, so they're really anxious to be there to work on this. But I'd like for the Rotarians to get a chance to interact with my students, especially my after-school hour of service students. They are remarkable young humans and just such hardworking kids. So
okay, we'll figure out a way.
We'll figure that out. We've still got a couple of weeks to do that.
Nicole has a question.
Thank you. I wanted to say that Ariana and I did it with Denise a few years ago. It was one of the most fulfilling, wonderful things we've ever done with Rotary, and I would strongly recommend you come to witness it.
Come and participate. We'd love to have you.
Okay.
Anyone, it's not too hard.
Wonderful. Okay, count on me anyway, but yep. Gilda, you will tell us how to register on that thing, right? Or maybe why don't we, ask everybody who want to register to send an email to you, Denise? Then you can.
That is fine for them to send me one, and then I'll send a reply, and I'll put it right here in I'll put my school address right in the chat now.
Perfect. Okay. Right. Thank you for that, Denise. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the project. Now, I was hoping to have a quick announcement from John Jones. Is John on the call? Let me see. I don't see him. It was meant to be just an announcement about the Charities Board meeting, which is taking place next week at 11 a.m., so before our club meeting. So everybody who would like to attend is invited, not just the members of that committee. So please mark that in your calendars as well. So can you stop sharing, Denise?
I'm not sharing.
Oh, you're not sharing? Okay. All right. So I have an announcement. I would like to share an event which is going to take place in April. So let me share and see what happens. Okay, so this is what I'm proposing for, thanks to a good friend of mine who is also my neighbor. It turns out that Stuart Morcom is building this huge tower in the middle of downtown. And he's inviting our Rotary members to attend and observe the construction on the construction site. It's going to be a 42-story luxury residence, and it's going to be interesting to see how those huge buildings are being built in the middle of downtown. I have visited the site last year when they were just starting, and now it's about 1/3 finished, and it's the right time to go and get to know what are the techniques used to build those wonderful buildings. So my friend Stu is going to make a presentation as well. So it will be a visit of the construction site. We'll be given hard hats, but we won't run any in any dangerous locations here. It's going to be pretty safe. So Thursday, April 28th, the time of the day will need to be announced a little later. But if you're interested, please write that in your books, and that's going to be an interesting event. So that's all for the announcement today. I think we are all fine now. And now I'm going to hand over to Rob Feidler to introduce our own Mike Driebe and the presentation of today. Okay, Rob.
All right, thank you, JP. Appreciate that. I have the pleasure of introducing Mike Driebe, president of Methodist Hospital Foundation. Mike has been a Rotarian almost 30 years. He and his wife Sylvia reside in Pomona, and that is where Mike got his first experiences in Rotary. Mike is recently designated to serve as Rotary District 5300 Governor for the 2024-2025 Rotary year. It's a great responsibility and a designation that we are really proud of Mike as a San Marino Rotarian. He joined San Marino Rotary in 2010. As president of Methodist Hospital Foundation, Mike has important news to share with us about a new relationship the hospital has made. I'm honored to present Mike Driebe.
Thanks very much, Ron. Well, I'm among friends, so I'm not stressing about this presentation, but I'm eager for you to hear about this, because when we don't know the facts, oftentimes we make stuff up. So in an effort to avoid that, I've tried to get this presentation out to several groups, and I'm so glad to have the opportunity to do it for my friends at San Marino Rotary. Basically, we have had a pretty substantive history over the years. We've been an independent, unaffiliated, that means standalone, nonprofit hospital since 1903. And in fact, we were founded in downtown Los Angeles. The original 4-room house is long gone, destroyed in the fire, but it moved in 2019 and expanded in 1919 and expanded in 1925, and then moved here to Arcadia in 1957. But we've been through quite a bit since then. We've had population growth. We had this major relocation. We've had economic downturns. We've also had demographic shifts. And of course, we've been through an international pandemic. So there's been a lot going on at Methodist, and we've survived it and managed to flourish through those years. One thing that stayed the same despite all the challenges we've faced as a hospital, though, is our culture. And when I first got to Methodist, I was really impressed by the very palpable sense of compassion, clinical excellence, patient safety. All of these were very, very clear to me. And I would hazard to guess that if you've ever been a visitor or unfortunately had to be a patient, you probably sense this for yourself as well. And a lot of that has to do with not only our roots as a Methodist hospital, but the local community support that we've enjoyed for many, many years. We've also, I would say, had a hallmark over the years of financial strength, particularly in the last 10 years. Our new at the time, I guess, our CEO, Dan Osman, took over. We had about 50 days cash on hand. And we had EBITDA of about $17 million. And for those of you who are not familiar with those financial terms, that meant with a $21 million a year mortgage payment on the debt that we put out to build the new tower, we were in tough shape. We didn't have enough money to pay the mortgage. We're now doing much better. EBITDA reached at one point about $47 million, and we now stand at about 380 days cash on hand. But these have been challenging times, and specifically what we're seeing as a hospital, and what a lot of hospitals are seeing, is reduced reimbursement. And that's reduced reimbursement not only from commercial payers like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, but also government payers too, like Medicare and Medi-Cal. Of course, at the same time, our costs are going up. And as a standalone hospital, that is difficult to manage. And in part, that is what's resulting in shrinking margins. When I first came to Methodist, we were probably enjoying operating margins of about 8%. The operating margin of the hospital today is probably 1%. So, and that is not because we're wasting money willy-nilly, but because of these challenges and pressures that we're facing. We also have the challenge as a standalone hospital with lack of relevance. If we approach a payer like an insurance company, for example, Blue Cross, and say, we believe we need an increase in our reimbursement rate, we really don't have leverage. But when a system approaches a payer, they have much more leverage. So that's an advantage we do not enjoy in our current position. It also applies to our vendors too. We go to a vendor and we say, hey, look, we're looking for a price break on spinal surgery implants. As a standalone hospital, we probably won't get as much traction as a system might that buys a much higher volume. We're also dealing with growing regulatory oversight. It doesn't feel like there's a week that goes by without one change or another in California's regulations, federal regulations, even county regulations, even more so now in the age of COVID. And of course, there's concern about the ongoing pandemic and how we can respond to that. And I will share with you that this has been a particularly challenging year for us, 2021, because with the pandemic, elective surgeries have gone down and census has gone up, but we don't have enough nurses to cover the census that we have oftentimes, because those nurses are also coming down with this more infectious strain of COVID. So it's been a challenging time during the pandemic. Nevertheless, the strategic goals of the board of directors of the hospital and the administration is to remain a full service community hospital, not to turn into a cancer hospital or an orthopedic hospital or anything like that, but to remain a hospital that provides care for our entire community from birth into old age. We also need to expand our services, but expand patient access to those services. And specifically, we're looking at areas like neurology, cardiac, urology, and then continue to improve the quality of care for those areas as well as the existing programs that we currently have. And that means being able to, if we're successful, at least in that regard, being able to attract the best and brightest physicians and staff. High quality, high talent people want to come to work for good hospitals and good organizations. Finally, we want to make sure we continue to garner community support. Very simply, we would not be the hospital we are today if it wasn't for the support the community gives us. I can tell you this, that a typical for-profit hospital our size probably spends $1.5 million a year in capital. That's improvements, new equipment, et cetera. Methodist Hospital, because we reinvest our excess revenue and any philanthropic monies that we receive, invests anywhere from $6 to $10 million a year in capital expense. And that means that we are perhaps not at the bleeding edge, but certainly close followers of technology improvements. And that means better care for our patients. So what's the answer? Well, the board of directors and the administration believes the answer is through an integrated delivery system through an affiliation. We're going to talk a little bit about what the word affiliation means in just a moment. But essentially, it expands our ability to recruit and retain physicians. It expands access for the community to health services right here in the San Gabriel Valley. So, for example, it could allow us to attract specialists that would practice here at Methodist, which means that you as a community member don't have to go to the ends of the earth or the ends of LA County to get the care that you need. It also means a more robust and secure IT system. And we all know that information technology is prone to a great many challenges these days. And it also means access to reserves for additional capital investment. And of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, being part of a larger system also means relevance to insurance companies and vendors. Also very important in our negotiation for supply costs and reimbursement. So before we get married to anybody, there were certain conditions. And this could not be a marriage, a forced marriage. You know, the old, pardon me, the very tired analogy about getting married at the end of a shotgun was not the way we were going to get married. We wanted to be sure that we were both approaching it, both partners approaching it from a position of strength. And so we needed to find a like-minded partner, someone who shared our values. Then that partner would help sustain our values and our culture, and then strengthen our ability to provide local high-quality care. And this is important because we didn't want to get affiliated with someone who would come in and change who we are or who wanted to change who we are. It's very, very important that we remain the hospital we are throughout any affiliation, and ensure the long-term viability of Methodist Hospital of Southern California. Now, could we have gone 5 years more, 10 years more, 15 years more as a private, nonprofit, standalone hospital? Yes, we could. But we felt this was the right time to approach an affiliation, because the longer we wait, our position weakens. We become a less attractive partner. And while we are fiscally sound and strong and have high quality care, safe care, that's the result of that fiscal strength, that was the time to seek out a partner. And I hope that makes sense. So it was more a marriage of equals rather than a forced marriage. And we'll talk about that in a second too. So who's our dance partner? Keck Medicine of USC. Not a surprise, because I'm sure many of you have seen this news already, but they are, we felt, the best partner for us. And it was an opportune time to talk with them too. And I'm not saying anything out of school here, but USC had been talking to several partners, potential partners, one of which was our friends at the Huntington Memorial Hospital. Huntington chose to go in a different direction, and USC came to us and invited us to have a more serious discussion. And after nearly 18 months of work, we came out with this proposed affiliation. So how does the community benefit? Expanded specialty services right here in Arcadia. USC physicians that you would otherwise have to go to Los Angeles for will be available right here at Methodist. And we'll continue to provide high quality care through better access to financial resources. I'm going to share a link with you in a minute that if you ever have insomnia and you need something to read to put you to sleep, it's a 74-page application that we sent to the Attorney General and the Federal Trade Commission. You're welcome to read it. It's a matter of public record. And part of that public record is that USC will provide $200 million in financial resources to Methodist Hospital. Now, I want you to understand that simply because we're getting $200 million doesn't mean that we have to stop raising money for the hospital, because that $200 million is going to go for a variety of things that we don't currently do, which means that our fundraising program needs to continue to support the things that we've been doing for many, many years. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment as well. New technology. So one of the things that this will support is the creation of a hybridized operating room. And what if you or a loved one have ever had a cath lab procedure where they've inserted a catheter, go up into a blocked artery, or to replace a heart valve, that's typically done in a radiology setting. Unfortunately, if something goes bad during that procedure and I need surgery, they're going to have to take me out of the cath lab, rush me upstairs to an operating suite, prep it, crack my chest open and do the surgery there after some period of delay. Well, a hybridized operating room, which is probably on the order of $10 million, would allow that cath procedure to be done in a sterile operating environment. Something goes bad, cardiac surgeon is right there, can open the chest and immediately perform the necessary surgery to save the patient's life. That's just one example of the technology that's coming our way. Another possibility in terms of what those dollars would provide would include the creation of a new outpatient center on the campus of the hospital. It could be a breast health center, a women's health center, office space, and outpatient surgery space. But a lot of that is being talked about, but nothing has been finalized yet. In addition, there's going to be spending on IT improvements, and that's in part what will be covered by the investment that USC is going to make at Methodist Hospital of over $200 million. Our community also benefits through clinical research and trials that will be done here at Methodist, again, as opposed to having to go all the way to East Los Angeles. Physician expertise. Again, we'll be getting those specialists on our campus to provide care that we don't currently provide here at Methodist Hospital. And then finally, training for new physicians. And this is really important. Our medical staff is aging. And as they age, and that average age increases, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find new young physicians to come in and take their place. Studies have found, though, that when a young physician does their residency training at a particular hospital, they will continue their practice of medicine at that hospital. Methodist does not have a residency training program currently, but we will as part of the USC Keck family. And that means that we'll have access to young physicians who are interested in working and serving in the community where they did their residency training. How does Methodist Hospital benefit from all this? Well, we remain a full service hospital for decades to come. And this is important to understand. USC isn't looking to affiliate with us because we're going bankrupt or because we're a poor partner, but because we are good at what we do. And they want us to remain where we are and who we are so that we can in turn refer higher level cases to them. And so we would remain a full service hospital for many, many, many more years to come. It strengthens the hospital as well by diversifying our services. We're not just depending on labor delivery or orthopedics or cardiac or stroke, but on other service lines as well. It would increase our census, which means that we would improve our financial margins even more. And in a day of shrinking margins, that's really crucial. Investment, as I mentioned a moment ago, in capital equipment, campus improvements like the new surgery center and outpatient program on our campus. And then improvements to Methodist would also include a better IT infrastructure, a residency training program, the hybridized operating room, and the medical office building and outpatient surgery center. All of those are just some of the ways that the hospital would be improved. So what does USC get out of all of this? Well, they get an assured referral source for complex cases. Right now, if we have a patient who needs a heart transplant, a liver transplant, a lung transplant, a kidney transplant, those go everywhere. They go to Irvine, they go to UC Riverside, they go to Loma Linda, they go to UCLA, USC. All of those cases would go to USC and no one else. It would extend their market presence as well, so that, again, they have a greater presence out in the community and an additional source of referrals. Increased relevance with insurance companies. It helps them in that regard as well, because they have become larger and more relevant to vendors and insurance companies. What stays the same? Well, we remain a full-service community hospital. Local governance remains in place. Our board would shrink from 21 to 15, And 2 of those 15 seats would go to USC. The CEO would be the 3rd, and the remaining 12 would be the folks right here in our community who currently serve on our board of directors. The executive team remains in place for 3 years. That means our CEO and the vice presidents, myself included, are all assured of retaining our positions, and that helps to provide continuity of leadership. The most important thing of all this, at least from my perspective as the chief fundraiser, is that the Methodist Hospital Foundation remains. We remain independent, and all of the money that we raise, past, present, and future, will only benefit the hospital on this campus. It doesn't benefit Norris, it doesn't benefit USC, medicine. It only benefits the hospital that sits right here. And our current physicians can stay right where they are. Oftentimes, doctors are very worried that a partner will come in and chase them out and replace them with their own doctors. Not the case. The new doctors that are coming into Methodist Hospital as a result of this affiliation are coming in to provide services that we don't currently provide. That means the docs who are here doing what they're currently doing will still have a place to be and a way to serve. And then there's no reduction in Methodist Hospital staff that's anticipated. One of the reasons why USC looked to us as a partner is because of the fiscal discipline that we exhibit in operating our hospital. They were impressed by the fact that we run a very lean operation and that we've been operating in the black for the last 12 years. So it doesn't behoove them to come in and gut the hospital staff to try and save funds, because it would simply change the nature of the hospital and diminish the quality of the care. And then finally, and most importantly, our mission is preserved for decades to come. So that's really what the board insisted on, to ensure that these factors would remain the same, regardless of who our potential partner would be. So what changes? Well, we now have a new corporate member. So when you think about an affiliation like this, it's known as a member substitution. So let me give you an example. San Marino Rotary Charities, its corporate member is San Marino Rotary. Methodist Hospital's corporate member was the United Methodist Women, still is, the United Methodist Women of the California Pacific Conference. They essentially oversaw the selection and approval of the CEO and the officers of the board of directors. Now, the new corporate member would be USC Keck. So that means the role of the United Methodist Women closes, that chapter closes, and a new chapter begins with USC Keck as the new corporate member. 2 seats, as I mentioned a moment ago, are filled on the board by USC, and of course, a new name, USC Arcadia Hospital. Not USC Methodist Hospital, not Arcadia Methodist Hospital, but it is, nevertheless, it's a new name. But one thing is important to remember, that who we are and what we do doesn't change. The name may be different, but we're not changing who we are as a hospital. Healthcare is changing. Let me talk a little about why this is important to understand. Right now, Cedars-Sinai in Huntington Memorial Hospital, as you all know, have gone through a member substitution. They've also have Torrance Memorial. So Cedars system is growing. Providence system is growing and includes 11 hospitals from Burbank to Mission Viejo. Adventist, Eminent, Kaiser, Kindred, Loma Linda, PIH Health, and more, all examples of the growing consolidation of healthcare and the systemization of hospitals that's going on here in the United States. The day of the standalone nonprofit hospital is coming to an end. And that is in part why the board recognized that this was the time to move forward. And that pace of consolidation is picking up. People are picking partners. And if you don't pick a partner soon, it's going to come back and bite you in the rear end. Now, one thing to understand is that there has been increased Federal Trade Commission and Attorney General scrutiny of these affiliations. And I'm sure you'll all remember that the Cedars-Sinai and Huntington Memorial Hospital affiliation resulted in a 360-page list of conditions that the Attorney General set forward. And in fact, Cedars and Huntington sued the Attorney General because some of those conditions were very onerous. They managed to settle out of court. But this is just an example of how closely the AG is scrutinizing this type of thing. Part of this is, in Michael Driebe's opinion, politically motivated too. When Sutter took over a bunch of health hospitals in Northern California, they instantly raised rates. They told their vendors, pay up or else, and the community really didn't have a choice. And there was a lot of political backlash because of that. And so the AG and their staff decided that they would more closely examine future affiliations like that. And Huntington and Cedars, unfortunately, got the brunt of that. Part of the AG's reasoning in that was because Huntington and Cedars were probably two of the 5 most recognizable hospitals in Southern California. And they believe there would be a serious competitive disadvantage. Methodist Hospital is relatively low on that recognizability scale. We're well known certainly within the San Gabriel Valley, but as in terms of being a regional player like Huntington or Cedars, we don't compare. So that's kind of what's different between those two affiliations. So timing. We have an agreement that was approved by our board, the board of the United Methodist Women of the California Pacific Conference. Obviously, they had to bless this or it couldn't have gone forward. The Keck Health System Board and the USC Board of Trustees Executive Committee. That's all been done. And we submitted the agreement to the Federal Trade Commission, which gave us a thumbs up, and to the Attorney General, which 2 weeks ago said they had no other questions. And that set in motion a 90-day clock. And that 90-day clock should end by April. And we should have the AG's conditions for approval at that time. We wrote the agreement, keeping in mind what Huntington and Cedars went through in an effort to ensure we didn't run afoul of the same problems. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and send you on this topic, rather. Go ahead. I've sent you a link. And here's the entire 74-page agreement that you can read for yourself, should you want to. But by all means, check it out. So I'm going to close with one other thought, too, because I care about you guys. And I want you to remember, if you're not feeling well, please don't wait to go to the emergency department. It's safe to come and seek care, no matter where you go, whether you go to Huntington or Eminent or Methodist. It's important that you don't wait. If you're experiencing symptoms of heart attack or stroke, get help, call 911 right away. We have an emergency department, as busy as it is, it's available 24/7. We've segregated out our COVID-19 patients, and everyone who's entering the hospital is checked for fever, and there's lots of protective equipment. So please, it's safe to seek care, don't wait. And the reason I stress this is during the first wave of the pandemic, we actually saw a reduction in people coming for heart attack and stroke care. It turned out people were so freaked out about getting COVID, they died at home from stroke and heart attack rather than come into the emergency department and get care. Please don't make that mistake. We're ready for you and we're able to care for you, and so's our neighbor Huntington. So please be sure and get the care you need when you need it. Don't wait. With that, I will open it up for questions, because I imagine there's one or two.
Thank you very much, Mike. That was a wonderful presentation. And I'm sure we have questions. We have plenty of time. So please go ahead.
Mike, if you don't mind unsharing your screen so we can see everybody.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Very good.
Okay. Okay, so if you have a question, you can raise your hand or do it like on the bottom of your screen. Any questions? Looking over there we go. We've got Jean who has a question, and then Joshua after Jean.
Hi, Jean.
Oh, you're muted, Jean.
Are the affiliations between the standalone community hospitals with various other hospitals happening all over the country? And is it mainly by urban areas?
Well, I heard the first part, and the answer to that question is yes. Consolidation is happening all across the country. I missed the second part of your question, Jean.
Is it mainly in urban areas?
No, it's not. I mean, in terms of sheer number, perhaps, but it's affecting rural hospitals as well. And the Sutter acquisition in Northern California is a good example of that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And can I just say, can I just interject that it's appropriate that Jean had the first question, because behind her I saw a hat and a statue that I recognized.
Right on. Dr. Cohen, you have a question?
It's also kind of a reflection of just the way that USC, especially Keck, handled an aneurysm, because I had an aneurysm on my kidney. I was just reflecting on some of the things you said about getting to a hospital, taking care, and I was also kind of moved by what happened with some of these people that were stroke victims out of anxiety and psychological responses to a medical condition. But what happened, to me in my incredible experience at Keck was that they found the aneurysm. They did the outpatient procedure just like you described, where they did it through the sort of like a laparoscopic approach, and it didn't escalate because of probably because how they handled it with blood clots. They were very efficient. So I was just marveling at how you were able to keep the reputation of the hospital clean from just like a media psychologist and process point of view. That's what Disney did with Pixar, and they were batting 1,000. So it's a brilliant approach, and I really just kind of commend it. I think they're a great hospital. They were going to take out my appendix or some of these other things at other hospitals, and they just did a little outpatient procedure at Keck. So and besides volunteering there, I really know that I think this is a really good position. There's a question here somewhere, but I really liked it. Just how did you do that to maintain that the integrity of your hospital, to partner with Keck so they didn't just come in with their doctors and kind of bulldoze things out?
Well, I think we made it clear, Dr. Cohen, that we wanted that the board would never approve an agreement like this unless there were assurances that the hospital on this campus would remain essentially the hospital that it is today. Now, this is an affiliation, but it is also an acquisition. They are investing $200 million in us. So we don't get something for nothing. Right now, our debt and our profit, if you will, remains ours. In 10 years' time, however, and you'll see that 74-page document that I sent you the link to, it becomes USC's. And USC could change its approach to medicine here. But I keep going back to my earlier point. When you get married to someone with the intention of changing them, you're setting yourself up for a problem. And they understand that. And our board understands that. And they're not marrying us because they want to change us. We're getting married because they like who we are and how we run our hospital. And they want us to remain essentially the same hospital, even 10 years from now.
I just think that's great. I just like the way you've done that, and I just want to commend you for it. Thank you.
Thanks. Bill Payne, I think, has a question. Bill, you're muted, buddy.
I have a comment and a question.
Sure.
My comment is I have my cousin's durable power of attorney and had to call for her 911. She lives in South Pass, and the paramedics came and attended to her. But I have to tell you, it took a little bit of convincing because they admonished me that the Huntington was on overload in the emergency and they were only taking the most dire of cases. Right. So it wasn't a pick up and move out. It was a little bit of a arm wrestle maybe, but okay. She's there and everything's moving forward. So I understand difficult times, and that was my experience. My question is merely as an observation. You're going to be our club's and district governor in another couple of years. I heard you say 3-year contract to stay. I'm wondering if you're thinking about retiring, and Rotary District Governor is how you're next going to spend your waking hours. It just seems kind of coincidental. You don't have to respond to that if you don't care to.
The answer is yes and yes. I plan to retire before I become district governor. So there's no way on earth I could have done the DG job and put in a full-time role at 50 plus hours a week. So I'll be stepping aside before I take on the DG responsibilities.
Exciting. I see Barbara's hand and Fred's hand. Barbara, go for it.
You're muted, Barb.
I have to say, Mike, that's sadness for Methodist, that Rotary's gain is certainly Methodist loss, but that was an incredible presentation. I had 7 questions and 6 of them were answered. I have 1 left. I understand that you're now married to USC. I'm curious if this is an open marriage, and how does Verdugo play into your relationship?
Good question. So Verdugo is kind of a different animal. For those of you who may remember, Verdugo was on the verge of bankruptcy. They were closing their doors. They needed a white knight to come in and save them. And that's exactly what USC did. We will be, with Verdugo, a part of the Keck system. And so we are talking with Keck now. We're having what we call transition meetings, so that things like human resources and IT, medicine, nursing, all sitting down at the same table on a regular basis, talking about what's the same and what's going to change when this becomes official. But yes, the commonality is we're all going to be a part of the Keck chain or the Keck system. But for Keck, it was marriage at the end of a shotgun. They really didn't have a lot of choice.
Thank you, Mike. Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Barb. Steve Garrett, Fred Soul. I see a bunch of people with their hands up.
I'll go last.
Okay. And Dennis Neer. Dennis?
Well, you started off by saying that some of the difficulties that hospitals have is because of government reimbursement. I get Medicare, I get a monthly statement that shows what the doctors or the providers' normal charges and then what the government pays, and they settle up with what, and it just seems like it's ridiculously low. And then I shattered my wrist, let's say 15 or so years ago. I went to Methodist Hospital, great care. And I think the bill was something like $30,000 or $35,000 for all the things. And yet the insurance, they settled up for $4,000. And I went to Methodist and said, look, this is nuts. Either your rack rates are crazy or you made a bad deal with your insurance people on reimbursement. And I see this through the government reimbursements. They just don't pay enough to take care of all the costs. So how does all this reimbursement stuff work? And is there any way that people like Methodists and doctors can do better?
Well, I'll take, instead of giving you the 2-hour response to your question, I'll try and do it in 2 minutes. Essentially, Medicare pays about 88% of our cost. So for every dollar of cost, Medicare pays us 88 cents, roughly, is how it works out. Medi-Cal pays about 70 cents of our cost. So where does the extra money come from? It comes from commercial payers, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Health Net, et cetera. We negotiate with them and have for decades, like many other hospitals, based on our rack rate. So years and years ago, we would say to Blue Cross, all right, look, this is our rate. We need to raise it by 10%. And that worked for a while. And then the commercial insurers said, well, you know, we can't keep approving these. So we started to bump up our rack rates and saying, okay, well, give us a percentage of this rack rate. And that's essentially how it's worked. And it's why you see such vast differences between what you pay or what your insurance company pays and what the hospital billed. I mean, it's like when you go to a hotel and you look at that thing on the back side of your entry door, it shows the rack rate of the room. You didn't pay anything near that, I hope. But that's essentially what's at work here. And it's kind of been this dysfunctional system for a long time. The hospitals can do better with Medicare if they improve the quality of their care. Medicare will give the hospital more of the money that it's been promised in reimbursement. It's called value-based purchasing. It would take a lot longer than the time we have now to explain, but essentially Medicare holds back some of your money as a hospital. But if you hit a certain quality score, you get that money back. So that's in part how hospitals can get more out of the government. And again, by affiliating, we can negotiate better rates with vendors and payers too, because we're now part of a system as opposed to being a one-off. Steve Garrett. Steve, you're muted.
Yeah, I know. Listen, you're divorcing the Methodist Church, I guess. Does that mean that the pastoral service and the chapel are gone?
I am so glad you asked that, because the answer is no. Chaplaincy is a huge part of who we are, and our chaplaincy training program is a huge part of who we are. For those who are not familiar, we train chaplains to be hospital chaplains, and we have students that come to us from all over the world, and that program will stick around. Our chaplaincy program works. It means better outcomes for our patients and more satisfaction for their families. And I'm also happy to report that while Dan Osman is the CEO, the cross isn't going anywhere that sits on top of our building. He said if it did, he wouldn't be able to stand near any windows. But no, that program is staying with us.
Thank you, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Fred.
Great, thanks. I was thinking maybe my question would get answered. I wouldn't have to say anything more, and I kind of don't. I just wanted to say that you don't have to worry about who you give this presentation to, whether friend or foe, because that was really an excellent explanation of what's happening.
Thanks,
especially have my background in healthcare, seeing these things go on. For Methodist to have, I'm sorry, Arcadia Hospital of USC, is that right?
USC Arcadia. That's not official yet, but it's.
Yeah, I know. I know. I started with a Methodist inspired invocation, so maybe I gave it a closing.
Yeah.
But having seen this kind of thing and some of the ways it can go, and Arcadia having stood in as an independent community hospital all these years, it truly is a testament of what you've accomplished. I was just going to say, rather than being an apologist about this in any way, this is what Arcadia is doing right now is in the best interest of the community. It's bringing a needed part of what's missing to them, and there's just no two ways about it, and you should lead with that.
Thanks, Fred. And it's true. It means that we'll continue to be here as well for many, many years.
Yeah, yeah.
Joseph.
Part of your community benefit plan,
Absolutely.
pretty much.
Joseph Chang.
Hi, Michael, my question, what happened for the hospital-based service physician, like a ER group and a cardiologist group and a radiologist group? Is that they will renegotiate or they will keep it temporary?
All of our contracts with medical groups, including ED, cardiology, and radiology, can change with each cycle of the contract. So I'm not suggesting that once this becomes official, all of those groups will get wiped out, pushed aside. They'll compete with other groups who are trying to get business at Methodist Hospital. No one's guaranteed a spot, Joseph, but no one's going to get booted out summarily because of the affiliation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Yeah, this is JP. I have a question. Given the situation which we inherited because of the COVID pandemic, I was reading somewhere there's in general there's a huge backlog of procedures which have not been completed because all the priority was given to treating COVID patients. And I was reading that the backlog now is almost like 1 year, which means it may take 1 year to recover from that backlog. So my question to you is that agreement with USC going to put you in a better position to fulfill the backlog?
Well, part of what it takes is the state of California allowing hospitals to do elective procedures again. And the state is now allowing that. So we will catch up as quickly as we can. But JP, what mitigates that effort is talent, nurses, techs, transporters, CNAs, and EVS workers, food and nutrition workers. If we, like other employers, can't find the staff we need to fill those positions, that's going to make it more difficult to get caught up in terms of any kinds of elective procedures or otherwise. It is challenging. USC is having the same trouble we are in terms of filling open positions. I just to give you guys a sense, and I'm not, again, not saying anything out of school, but when I first came to Methodist 12 years ago, it was, if you were a nurse and we hired you, we gave you a $5,000 bonus. You know what that bonus is today? $30,000. Oh, that's what the employment market has done in response to this vacuum, if you will, of qualified staff. If you are an hourly non-management employee at Methodist and you refer someone who gets hired on as an RN, you get $10,000. So I mean, we're taking some pretty drastic steps to be competitive, and that it applies not only to nurses but to the other ancillary positions as well.
Okay.
Tough time out there.
All right.
Hi,
well, thank you, Mike.
You bet. Hi, Barbara. You're muted. You need to turn off your mute.
I said, do you need any English majors?
I don't know. I might need a new graphic design person. The hospital's marketing team lost its graphic design guy. He's going to Texas, of all places.
Oh, wow.
Well, I don't know who did your graphics, but they were great and I hope that we get to see this link so we can pass it on to other people.
Yeah, I sent the presentation to Gilda, and Gilda, you're welcome to share it. Guys, and if I may, while I've got your attention, if there are other groups in the community that you think should hear this, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to share this with, the San Marino City Club, the San Marino Chinese Club, whoever you think would benefit from seeing it. Joseph and my team have been talking about getting a presentation in front of the Chinese Club, but anybody you can think of, please let me know. We'd be happy to bring it to you.
I actually have a question about that. Because Skip Rizzo from the Institute of Creative Technology often works with Keck. and with physical therapy and some of the work with biofeedback and neurofeedback. This might be good to do something to support the doctors and nurses and staff that have been traumatized from COVID, because we're dealing with PTSD for military, but it might also apply to there's a lot of ex-military that work, in hospitals as well. It's just people that are traumatized from COVID. So since we're working with traumatic injuries psychologically, just to support them, to keep the staff not just happy but functional, and so they can deal with the overwhelm. It really is who's supporting the supporters is what always concerns me.
That's a fair point, Dr. Cohen, and very spot on. We as an industry need to do more for the people who are caring for our patients.
Yeah, so maybe this kind of proposal that you're doing, if they're interested, maybe there's something that they could design in the future for research. Who knows?
Any other questions or thoughts? All right, guys, thanks for your time and attention. I'm at your service. If you have questions, let me know.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think this has been really very interesting for all of us, and probably will, there will be follow-up discussions and exchanges about that, I'm sure. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this meeting. I just wanted to say that we'll meet again next week, Thursday, February 17th, and that day the program will be our 4-way speech contest. Thank you to Jeannie Xiao and the program committee to making that possible, organizing that for us. Next week, we also have, after the club meeting, our board meeting. So the announcement will follow next week. Rotarians and guests, thank you for joining us today. And I'm now calling this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you very much and see you next week. Those of you who want to attend the International Project Committee meeting, please stay on the same Zoom meeting. We'll continue in a moment. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mike. Great job.
Thank you, Mike.